Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth episode of this series, in which I will be discussing the results of the survey and the conclusion. I have conducted a survey with over 800 respondents with 3.39% margin of error. This is where I have asked questions related to their perspectives and experiences with religious ethnic issues. I asked respondents, based on a scale of 1 to 5, how bad of a religious or cultural divide that exists within Indonesia's society, 1 being non-existent and 5 being prominent. The results? The average rating people gave was 3.39. This shows that almost all respondents share the view that conflict exists, but they are not that prominent. When asked to rate 1 out of 5 regarding Indonesia's unity, 1 being divided and 5 being very united, the average rating was 2.94. An interesting pattern that I've found looking through the qualitative data is the fact that people associated with the demographic majority is least likely to experience discrimination based on their background compared to those associated with the demographic minority. Demographically, Javanese people make up 40% of the population, while Muslims make up 70% of the population, while the Chinese only makes up less than 1% of the population. After a careful analysis of my survey, I have come up with a theory. I have grouped all of the respondents into 6 respective categories. The first being the majority group, who consists of people identifying as Javanese Muslims. The second group consists of the single minority A, who identify as non-Javanese Muslims. The third group, the single majority group B, consists of people who identify as Javanese non-Muslims. The fourth group, the single minority group C, are for people who identify as Chinese Muslims. And the fifth group is the double minority group A, people who identify as non-Javanese non-Muslims. And the last group, number 6, is the double minority group B, who consists of people identifying as Chinese non-Muslims. Now, when asked whether or not they have been personally discriminated against for their background, the percentage of people who said yes in each group is eye-opening. I have collected all of the data and ranked them based on the lowest to the highest percentage of people who said they have been discriminated against for their background, and the results are astounding. Coming up first is within the single majority group A, the people who said yes is at 22%. Therefore, out of 100 people, 22 people said yes to being discriminated against for being non-Javanese Muslims. Secondly, this is followed by the majority at 23%. Coming third is the single minority group C. While they are Chinese, they also identify as Muslim, which protects them from discrimination. About 56% saying yes. In fourth place, we have the double minority group A, where their status as non-Javanese shields them from discrimination, with 64% saying yes. While in the single minority group B, even though they are a majority demographic, their ties to non-Muslim religions increases the chance of being discriminated against, with 67% saying yes. And lastly, we have the double minority group B, with a total of 68% saying yes. From this survey, I can conclude that associations with certain backgrounds makes people less targeted for discrimination. Some groups are more vulnerable targets to political provocation, as sentiments against them within society is already widespread and deeply ingrained. All it takes is a little push before the escalation of conflict occurs. When asked about the main factor behind ethnic religious conflicts, 40.8% of survey respondents share the view that political provocation is the number 1 factor, while the majority says otherwise. Respectfully, it is true that people tend to overlook the political motif behind every ethnic religious conflict. Negative sentiments against associations of ethnic religious groups have become normalized. Because this natural bias comes innately, people are unconscious of their prejudiced attitude. This is where ethnic-religious politics come to play. With the right words, slogans, and movements, people who already have these negative preconceived notions against targeted groups are more likely to believe unfavorable views regarding that specific group, even though it might not necessarily be true. Circling back to my thesis statement, it is proven that political influence have the power to drive ethnic-religious divide through the fueling of disputes between groups. What we can do with this information is to use it to bring awareness to political campaigns and rhetorics that purposefully target certain ethnic and/or religious groups. Know that it is unethical and a baseless assumption for aggression. We need to prevent misinformation from spreading and protect Indonesia's diversity. Governments must uphold the law that prohibits hate speech in all forms. Transparency and impartiality is needed to enforce the law effectively. That's all for me. Thank you for sticking around through the series. Hopefully you learned something new. I'll see ya when I see ya.